A lot of number crunching. Let's get a view and speak live to Ryan Shorthouse, who's Executive Chair of Bright Blue. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So, first of all, I mean, in your view, they revised the figures up. Where are the extra numbers coming from?
Well, I mean, look, since the pandemic, there's been a huge spike in net migration levels. I mean, in the 2010s, it was high. The Conservatives always talked about having a target of tens of thousands, and it was typically around 300,000. We're now way higher, up to 600, 700,000. And I think some of the increase is actually going to be temporary. And I think there's three reasons for this. The first is there's a bit of a kind of post-pandemic surge. So a lot of people who would have come during the pandemic couldn't because, of course, the lockdown was happening. So a lot of students, therefore, came later with the typical cohorts that arrived in that year. So it's kind of increased the numbers coming, and that's a sort of reason for it. The second is lots of Ukrainian and Hong Kong refugees arrived in both 2022, particularly 2022, but also a high number in 2023. And the third reason that there's lots of international students. The government's got a target, in fact, to increase the number of international students. And more of them are coming, particularly with their partners. And that's increasing the numbers. And why I'm saying it's likely a lot of this to be a kind of temporary from the 300 to 600, 700 mark, thousand, that is because a lot of these students and refugees will emigrate and go back in the years to come. So I think it will then start to come down more. And in fact, the ONS, which is the official statistics body, is saying they are starting to see a rise in that type of emigration. So look, it's still a huge number of people. It's against what the Conservative government has been saying for a long time, that they'll reduce the level of net migration. But it will, I think, fall quite significantly in the years ahead.
Labour's Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper saying today's figures show the scale of utter Tory failure on immigration, asylum and the economy, saying the increase in work visas and health and social care visas prove an abysmal record on skills and training, adding the government has run our economy to the ground. And she also talks about the asylum seekers in hotels at a record high of 56,000, costing the taxpayer £3 billion a year. Does she have any fair points there?
Well, the fair point is that the Tory party has failed, yes, because it has repeatedly said that it would bring net migration figures down to under 100,000, which used to be the case in the 1990s. So the Tory government have failed on that front. And obviously, you do need to have control of migration because of the impact that has on public services and on housing. So there does need to be some control. At the end of the day, these are eye-wateringly high amounts. I would also say that most economic predictions around our growth levels, because of our high levels of migration, the very low levels of growth that were predicted are actually being propped up slightly as a result of the levels of high immigration. So, I think it does pose huge challenges for infrastructure and public services, but also levels of high immigration are associated with levels of high levels of economic growth. So, there's a sort of balancing act to be had, but certainly you're right that the levels that we're experiencing at the moment are way beyond what the government has promised.
Thank you very much for joining me live to discuss this. Ryan Shorthouse is Executive Chair at Bright Blue,
where the news never stops.